As of today, Iran has a new leader. He is not bowing to U.S. demands.
I think for many folks within the regime at the moment, they believe it's kill or be killed.
I'm Carolyn Beeler.
And I'm Marco Werman. The son of the late Ayatollah is now the new Ayatollah. And as bombs keep raining down, Iranians have to deal with the toxic mess: poisoned water and dirty air.
You can have irritations and burns. You can have any sort of respiratory distress.
Also, the oligarch running the show in Georgia.
He basically managed to treat this country as this private property.
And the agony and ecstasy of canned fish.
I smelled some cheese, but you talk about like seaside. Would it be high tide or low tide?
This would definitely be low tide.
All today here on The World. This is The World. I'm Marco Werman.
And I'm Carolyn Beeler. Thank you for joining us today. The war in Iran is now in its 10th day. The U.S. and Israeli militaries show no signs of letting up. Neither does Iran.
Fresh missile and drone strikes are spreading across the Middle East. Even as the fighting intensified, supporters of the Iranian regime gathered today and over the weekend in Tehran to celebrate the selection of the country's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei.
Mojtaba Khamenei is the second son of the late Iranian supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. The powerful clerical body, the Assembly of Experts, announced the son's selection as supreme leader on Sunday.
To learn more about him and how he might govern, we reached out to Karim Sajjadpour. He's an Iran expert and senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace.
I think what's most important to understand about him is that he will be a continuation of his father. He's someone who is very much committed to the principles of the 1979 revolution, including resistance against America and Israel. He's backed by the senior leadership of the Revolutionary Guard. Some of the most radical figures in the Islamic Republic are supporting him. And he's inheriting a very difficult situation in that not only was his father killed, but his wife and his mother were also killed. He was himself injured in that attack. And right now he's trying to elude Israeli assassination. So he's probably in a bunker or in hiding somewhere. So he's essentially this injured guy who's lost his closest family members in hiding, is trying to simultaneously fight a three-part war against America, Israel, and much of his own population, and also trying to govern at the same time. So he's really in a very difficult position.
Mojtaba had served in the military during the Iran-Iraq War and has deep ties to the powerful IRGC, the Iran Revolutionary Guard Corps. How important have those credentials been in securing this role?
Well, the power behind his throne are indeed the Revolutionary Guards. Although he wears a turban and a robe of a Shiite cleric, Shiite clerics are not the main power anymore in the Islamic Republic of Iran. It's a regime which over the last couple of decades has transformed into much more of a military dictatorship. And so his ties to the Revolutionary Guards were essential. And especially when you're talking about a country, a regime which is fighting an existential war of survival, what I was told by a former senior Iranian official is that the regime didn't want to switch horses midstream. The power and responsibilities of the office of Supreme Leader are so vast, most importantly among them, Commander-in-Chief of the Revolutionary Guards, that at this time in which the regime is fighting for its existence, it needed someone who was going to bring continuity and would be familiar with all the vast tasks of the Supreme Leader.
Yeah, remind us what those powers actually are.
Iran is a deceptive government for outsiders to understand because on paper there is a president in Iran, there's a parliament in Iran that are ostensibly elected offices. But in practice, the office of the Supreme Leader controls this vast Byzantine structure. For example, the Guardian Council, which vets every candidate that wants to run for public office. They oversee the judiciary, the media, The Revolutionary Guards are the commander-in-chief of the Revolutionary Guards. So I think it's clear to all Iranians where power lies in the country. And that is going to be a challenge for Mojtaba Khamenei, because whereas for many years inside Iran, when people had complaints about the poor state of the economy or other issues, they oftentimes took out their anger against the president of Iran and said, well, this president hasn't delivered. But now it's totally clear to all Iranians that the presidency in Iran is a powerless office, and the office of supreme leader is the one that controls the country. And so with that kind of recognition will come accountability.
So as supreme leader, how much will Mojtaba Khamenei have to say about how this war is going to be fought? Who actually has final say on how Tehran prosecutes this war?
The fact that he is in hiding right now, and as I said, likely residing in a bunker perhaps somewhere, and the fact that this is a regime whose communications have been largely penetrated by U.S. and Israeli intelligence, his ability to rule and govern under normal circumstances is very limited. So at the moment, the delegation of both political and military affairs in Iran is reportedly in the hands of two individuals. There's a guy called Ali Larijani. He's a longtime Islamic Republic apparatchik who is thought to be kind of managing the country's political affairs. And the current Speaker of Parliament, a guy called Ghalibaf, he's a former Revolutionary Guard commander, is thought to be managing the country's military affairs. And really the big question about Mojtaba Khamenei is whether he can elude assassination. You know, I've said his father ruled for 37 years. Mojtaba may not be able to rule for 37 days.
Wow. His father was 86 when he was assassinated. Is it possible the father had already, in practice, handed some of the reins to his second son, Mojtaba?
Well, definitely Mojtaba has been his father's shadow for a couple of decades now. But the succession to him, it really further delegitimizes the regime in that this is a government which came to power in 1979, having deposed a hereditary monarchy. And the father of the 1979 revolution, Ayatollah Khamenei, famously said that hereditary succession is evil, it's un-Islamic. But the reality is that when, as I said, Mojtaba, not only was his father killed, but much of his closest family members were killed, and the country was thrown into this existential situation, his stock rose as a result of that. That's when the regime closed ranks and went into familiar hands.
I mean, the danger for Iran's regime in this fragile moment is that its leadership might begin to fracture. Is there a way for Mojtaba Khamenei to be a unifying figure?
So that will really be the big question, which will be key to whether or not they can stay in power. Can they maintain the regime's cohesion, in particular the cohesion of the security forces and the Revolutionary Guards? And it's too soon to answer that question.
So finally, Karim, we have heard President Trump call Mojtaba Khamenei an unacceptable choice as supreme leader. If this man has, as you said, a target on his back and may not last 37 days, what sort of signal does Mojtaba Khamenei's selection send to Washington and Israel?
The signal is a signal of continuity. And it puts President Trump in a predicament because, according to some reporting, this war cost the United States up to $1 billion a day. And we're now in day 10. And I think it's going to be very difficult for President Trump, having spent over $10 billion for this war, to simply replace one 86-year-old Ayatollah Khamenei with a 56-year-old Ayatollah Khamenei.
Karim Sajjadpour is an Iran expert and senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. He's been speaking with us about the selection of Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei.
The killing of the previous supreme leader is still very much on people's minds in faraway Kashmir, the part of the territory administered by India. For more than a week, tens of thousands of people there have been protesting and expressing their grief. Schools in Kashmir just reopened today for the first time since the elder Ayatollah's death was announced. Syed Shahryar has our story.
In Kashmir's Budgam district, thousands of mourners took to the streets after Friday prayers, marching in procession while reciting lamentations and also chanting anti-Israel and anti-American slogans. Arif Akhund is one of the marchers.
Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei represented Muslim world. He was not only the leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran, he was a spiritual leader for all the Muslims all around the world.
Indian police and paramilitary forces have used tear gas to disperse groups of protesters and have enforced restrictions across parts of Srinagar. Authorities have set up checkpoints, demanded people stay in their homes. Schools and businesses have been closed. As the march in Budgam moves forward, a group of young boys joined holding effigies of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Trump, which they bang on the ground and later burn in anger. Last week, just after news of the assassination of the supreme leader spread across Kashmir, thousands of men and women poured out of their homes and marched from different neighborhoods towards Srinagar city center. The spontaneous outpouring of anger turned into one of the largest gatherings witnessed in the area in several years. As they reached the city center, many mourners were seen beating their chests and crying loudly, expressing grief and anger. After the large gathering in the city center, authorities moved to prevent further marches using tear gas to disperse crowds. On the outskirts of the city, protesters attempting to march toward the center were also stopped and shelled with tear gas. One mourner, who gave his name only as Ali, explains that Kashmiris have always felt a special connection to Imam Khamenei.
So it's about Muslim brotherhood, and it's also about having a knowledge and awareness about world politics and Middle Eastern politics.
Back in the 1980s, Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei visited Kashmir during a trip that many here still recall. Kashmir's top cleric Mirwais Umar Farooq says the visit reflected what he describes as Khamenei's deep connection and affection for the people of the region.
During that visit, he came to the historic Jama Masjid and offered Friday prayers along with my late father, Shaheed Mirwais Farooq. That moment, symbolizes a spiritual and religious connection which Iran has had with the people of Kashmir, the Muslims of Kashmir, and with Jama Masjid as an important religious institution.
Agha Sayyid Ruhollah Mehdi, a member of parliament from Srinagar and a Shia Muslim leader, says the way Indian authorities have treated demonstrators and the death of Khamenei has been shameful.
India never used to be like this. Internationally, it was non-aligned. Domestically, it would allow not only protests, it would even allow dissent. But today you can find that people are not allowed to come out in protest, which is not against the nation of India, which is not against the state or country of India, which is against the aggression of a foreign power against a sovereign and a friendly neighbor.
Authorities in Kashmir say Friday prayers and gatherings last week passed largely peacefully, and the restrictions imposed in parts of Srinagar are being lifted. Schools and businesses reopened today, but for many Kashmiris, particularly among the Shia Muslim community, the grief and anger expressed over the past week are unlikely to fade soon. Shia leaders here in Kashmir set a mourning period of 40 days. For the world, I am Said Shahryar, Srinagar, Kashmir.
Just ahead, the lives of oligarchs, specifically their creepy palaces. You're listening to The World. This is The World. I'm Carolyn Beeler. In Tehran, U.S. and Israeli bombings on Saturday set oil depots on fire. And now a thick cloud of black smoke hangs over Tehran. Even indoors, residents say their eyes have been burning, as have their throats. Recent rain in Tehran was also black. Kaveh Madani is the former deputy head of Iran's Department of Environment. He told me the fires are coming under control, but people are still suffering.
So we already know about the impact of air pollution on people when we have toxic hydrocarbon compounds all over the place, sulfur oxides, nitrogen oxides, ashes, PM 2.5 particles, and heavy metals. So inhaling those pollutants would have an immediate impact on you. Even if you are a healthy person and you're exposed, you can have irritations and burns. You can have any sort of respiratory distress. You can have even neurological reactions. Of course, in a situation like this, you have to stay inside. But staying inside is not easy for everyone. Mm-hmm. And we have a lot of places where your houses don't have glasses anymore because of the explosion. And this is millions of people who got exposed to something they didn't ask for.
Millions of people, you say. Is the air quality still very bad, or has it cleared at all since the fires have mostly been suppressed?
Of course, as time passes, things would get better when it comes to air pollution. But other sorts of pollution still remain in place. So when you had this rain, essentially the black rain or the oil rain, if you're a human, you take showers and you get cleaned up. But if you're, say, a feral cat, if you're a bird, if you're an animal out there, if you're part of the vegetation, soil and so on, these chemicals now penetrate into groundwater and water systems, and there would be lasting impacts on the residents, on the environment there.
Tell me more about contaminated water supplies, because Tehran has been going through drought. There has been concern about water scarcity. Could this further exacerbate that problem?
Absolutely. When it comes to water scarcity, our concern is not only the quantity of water, but also the quality of water. When water gets polluted, it becomes useless. Remember that the water that we use for irrigation is untreated waters, the water that you take out of canals or groundwater. So you either have to manage to treat it some way that is impossible. We only do that for drinking water, or use it for irrigation with all its pollution. So that would go back into the food supply chains, and they would eventually infiltrate into their bodies.
Is it clear how severe the impact might be that you just mentioned because of these fires? Or are you just saying this is what would happen or will happen, but we really don't know anything on the ground about the extent of this yet?
So we already know enough about air pollution, soil pollution, water pollution to know what to expect. So the physics of it is not going to surprise us because we know those processes exist. Fortunately, I should say, we haven't had many of these incidents in history to know what the long-term impacts are. It has happened during the Gulf War, but fortunately...
There has been documentation, I believe, of long-term health impacts from burning oil stores, I think in Iraq, right?
Of course, and then we also know where we have in oil extraction sites in, for example, southwest Iran, where there is more exposure to air pollution and soil pollution and so on. There are increased risk of cancer and a lot of other health risks. And we also have been talking about how many people get killed in Iran because of air pollution, in Tehran in particular. So now I would expect an exponential growth to those numbers.
Have you been able to speak with any of your loved ones or friends in the area? And if so, have they been talking about this?
Yeah, I mean, I've been reading a lot of reactions and I've been talking to people. They smell this, even in their homes. They're frustrated by everything that is happening. They're even questioning the intents and the motives, because let's not forget that a lot of people in Iran are also unhappy with the system in place, but they also question the motives for these sorts of attacks because they have lasting impacts on them when it comes to health and environment. environment, but also speaking of the country's infrastructure. Even if there is a regime change tomorrow, there is a huge cost to fix those things. You cannot fix them overnight. You cannot build these depots back and the tankers and everything. So it would impact the Iranians for generations, I would say, for years and for decades.
And what about specifically the impact of this environmental contamination? Can that be cleaned up? So groundwater supplies or soil?
I mean, let's be honest when we talk about a simple soil remediation. So those are not processes that can happen overnight. So it's delusional to think something of this magnitude and scale can be addressed in a sanctioned country, in a war, even within a few years. So I don't anticipate any quick fix for this, as we didn't see it in the past when it happened to the other countries dealing with the Gulf War. I don't expect something quick to happen in this instance.
Kaveh Madani is the director of the United Nations University Institute for Water, Environment, and Health. He was formerly deputy head of Iran's Department of Environment.
In the U.S., immigrants own about 1 in 5 businesses, and right now many of those business owners say they're hurting because of policies enacted by the Trump administration. GBH's Sarah Betancourt reports from Chelsea, just outside Boston.
At a bakery in Chelsea, a worker blends batter for tres leches cake, while the owner, Flor, prepares her coffee machine to make tres leches lattes. Flor is worried about being detained by ICE, so GBH News is not using her last name.
This is the milk that I mentioned, is more expensive but delicious. Here we make a latte, combining the 3 milks.
The cost of that condensed milk has gone up by 60%, which Flor is not thrilled about. But she lights up when she talks about her bakery's concoctions and her 3 daughters. Originally from Mexico, Flor is in the middle of trying to get a green card. But the past year under the Trump administration has hit hard. ICE agents have patrolled outside her bakery. And one worker who lived an hour away quit in fear.
One of my employees left her job. She called me one day and said, I can't come in anymore because I'm afraid that something will happen to me on the way there. It was a difficult change for us.
Massachusetts has more than 90,000 immigrant entrepreneurs who generate more than $3 billion through their businesses, according to MIRA, the Massachusetts Immigrant and Refugee Advocacy Coalition. Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley recently held a private event at an Ethiopian restaurant in Boston to hear from them directly about their concerns.
They find themselves navigating an uncertain terrain given the chaotic economic policies, including tariffs, by the Trump administration, and they find themselves at the intersection of anti-immigrant policies and a hostile economy.
In gateway cities like Chelsea, where nearly half of residents are foreign-born, people are afraid to go out due to ICE sightings. Jennifer Hassell with the Chelsea Chamber of Commerce says that's having an impact on small businesses.
But we have a number of restaurants and businesses in the community that have had a kitchen basically shut down because either individuals fear leaving, they might not be documented, or they've already been, detained.
Some immigrant business owners are well aware their immigrant customers are afraid. Aku Jabahate owns the spa Bold Skin Babe, with locations in Boston and Walpole. They focus on skincare for Black and brown people. A U.S. citizen originally from Senegal, Jabahate says many of her customers are Haitians who have less money in their pockets now due to convoluted changes to their immigration status.
My clients are very transparent with me. And then how they say economically, sometimes they cannot make it, they will tell me straight, Aku, I can't come this month.
And that influences how much money Jabahate can make. She also says customers who used to travel from as far away as Connecticut have stopped coming in.
If you are an immigrant and you are scared for your life, there's no way you're gonna, that's far, and then you're scared to get yourself in getting grabbed on the streets.
That's the sound of a butcher shopping up halal meat at Hebron Market in Mission Hill. Owner Yusuf Irsikat is a Muslim originally from the West Bank, where he says he faced persecution at Israeli checkpoints. 2 decades after coming to the United States, he's now a citizen and says he loves serving customers from a nearby mosque as well as local students. But he says he's facing new challenges, including rising costs for wholesale meat. He's tried to keep his prices low, but it isn't easy.
The steak, the meatball, the Philly steak used to be $33. Now it's $54. You know what that means? Yani if I'm making $3 out of each sandwich, now I'm making $1.80.
And that's not the end of it. Ersikat says he's paying more for halal lamb from the farm he uses in Maine, and even for boxes imported from Turkey at his neighboring shop, Crispy Dough Pizza. Ersikat says he can understand tariffs on tech products.
But not on the vegetables and the food that people eat, because you're affecting your citizens. Trust me, it's too expensive for them. And I feel shy. I always give them 10% off and take the drinks for free. But that affects me in the end. I have bills to pay.
Erzikat's shops are still afloat, but some businesses haven't been able to hold on. East Somerville's roughly 100 small businesses are 70% immigrant-owned, according to the group East Somerville Main Streets. La Brasa, a high-end restaurant, was one. But in the past year, profit margins shrank, and a business that needed $30,000 a week to succeed was just making over $1,000 by late last year. Chef Daniel Bojorquez made the hard decision to close in January. He says many factors prompted the move, but food prices and immigration enforcement played a part.
People think about East Somerville as kind of like the center of immigration crackdown. People don't want to see that, I think. And so I think people think twice about visiting the area.
In her bakery in Chelsea, Flora's holding out hope things can change, and she's working with an accountant to survive the next few months. She's had to raise a few prices, but she isn't giving up. She says she wants to see her daughters become whatever they want. Standing next to a card the girls made her, Flora says her middle daughter dreams of becoming an architect, and her youngest, a psychologist.
El punto principal para mí es que nuestros hijos no tengan la vida.
The principal point for me is that our children do not have the life that we had. Then, thank God, I have my daughters who are stars. That is what we are fighting for them to excel and have a better future.
For the world, I'm Sarah Betancourt.
This is The World. I'm Marco Werman.
And I'm Carolyn Beeler. We have focused much of our coverage today on war news from the Middle East, but there are other headlines we are keeping an eye on.
We'll start with Cuba. U.S. military action in Venezuela and a blockade of Cuba has choked off the island's oil supply. President Trump has warned that Cuba could be his next target after Iran. He's created what he's calling the Shield of the Americas Summit. The group of Latin American leaders met over the weekend to help the U.S. take care of Cuba. The U.S. has eased oil restrictions on Cuba, allowing some oil back to the island for use by the private sector.
In Turkey, a trial has begun for Istanbul's jailed mayor, Ekrem İmamoğlu. He was arrested almost a year ago on corruption charges widely thought to be politically motivated. Polls show İmamoğlu as the main challenger to Turkey's longtime president, Recep Tayyip Erdogan. At today's hearing, İmamoğlu asked to speak. Judges denied the request.
The Prime Minister of Taiwan, Cho Jong-tai, went to Japan over the weekend for the World Baseball Classic. It is the first time a Taiwanese Prime Minister has visited Japan since 1972, when the countries broke formal diplomatic ties. Cho has called it a private trip for baseball purposes only, but China is not pleased. The country's foreign ministry spokesperson has accused Cho of going to Japan to engage in little tricks and provocations.
We will keep watching those stories.
And now something fishy in Sweden. Fans of a fermented herring dish called surströmming are trying to get the delicacy added to the intangible cultural heritage list. Just one problem. Surströmming is best known for grossing people out. The World's Josh Coe gave it a try.
I'm kind of a picky eater. I can't handle raw onions. There's just something about the crunchy texture. I don't know. Don't get me started on it, but I also can't resist a good challenge. That's how I discovered surströmming and the surströmming challenge online. The goal is quite simple. Eat this fermented herring from Sweden without throwing up. But first, you do need to remove the fish from this pressurized can without the fish bits and brine exploding everywhere.
Caravan. Oh God, I just squirted in my face. Surströmming water in my face. Good start.
Then comes the smell.
Oh, that is so foul.
It smells like sewers.
Oh, it's foaming, bro.
And, as you can tell, for many people, the gag reflex. But among some proud Swedes, surströmming is a delicacy.
When you open it, it's different smells of cheese.
Joachim Hillberg is a member of the Surströmming Academy, an organization dedicated to preserving this very Swedish tradition. Hillberg's family is from northern Sweden, where surströmming originates. For centuries, salt was a luxury item, especially far north. So, to save money, people developed this technique to preserve the herring in brine.
It's kind of like sparkling wine. You have 2 steps of fermentation. One's in the cask and one in the bottle. And here you have one in the cask and one in the can.
These days, fans across the country gather in August to open up the cans and celebrate the end of summer. Hillberg, however, says he'll eat this all year round.
So I have a little stash here in the fridge, and I have different vintages. And here we have from 22, the best cask of the year. But we'll go with this one from last year.
But first things first, he shows me the proper way to open this can.
I can't help but notice there's a bit of a bulge in the can.
Yeah.
So that's from the gases.
That's from the gas fermentation there. It's kind of like champagne or sparkling wine. You get pressure in the bottle. You don't want to shoot the cork in someone's eye.
Yeah.
And you don't want to shoot the brine in someone's eye. So what I do...
Without further ado, Hillberg angles the can at about eye level to show me up close that surströmming doesn't have to explode all over the place.
So I want to angle it. So the air pocket is here. And then I'll just go like this. And then the air goes out.
I brace myself as the odor begins to seep out, permeating Hillberg's kitchen and my nostrils with what some might call the unholy stench of Davy Jones' locker. But when I finally take a deep breath, the smell is unexpectedly familiar. It smells like home, like summers on Cape Cod at a very specific time of day.
I like the sea analogy. I smelled some cheese, but you talk about like seaside or?
Yeah, I mean, I come from the shore back home, so maybe that's kind of what it's calling back to.
Would it be high tide or low tide?
This would definitely be low tide.
Maybe it's nostalgia for those summers of my youth, or maybe the smell just isn't as bad as social media makes it out to be. Either way, the contents of the can are kind of hard to love. It's packed with headless, mostly gutted herring, soaking in a murky, pinkish-brown liquid. As I stare into the can, questioning my life choices, Hillberg lays out beautiful white and blue porcelain plates, each depicting figures from Swedish history. I learned to remove the bones on a portrait of King Oscar I.
Oh yeah, it's very soft.
Yeah, I mean, it's been fermenting from last year.
Yeah.
So it will be softer and softer.
The most popular way to eat surströmming is minced up and sprinkled atop a large, crispy piece of flatbread with a variety of toppings like cheese, potatoes, chives, and tomatoes. My first crack at chopping up the surströmming was amateur at best, and my sandwich had a few large, goopy clumps.
I think it'll be nice to kind of have a sort of mountain of it right in the middle to kind of look forward to, you know?
Like a journey.
Yes, a journey to the heart of surströmming.
And so, my sandwich complete, we began that journey.
Here we go.
Yeah, you have these different flavors, and the surströmming is more like a
pungent.
Pungent is there, but it's all this together, which I think is really nice.
And it was pretty nice, actually. Compared to the smell, the taste is surprisingly mild. Something between anchovies and a very sharp cheddar or aged brie. The aftertaste, on the other hand, that takes some getting used to. It's like a big hint of ammonia and notes of low tide.
It's very briny.
It's very briny, salty, and they have this kind of fermented flavors.
With the challenge now complete, I could look forward to a day of very bad breath and belching with pride. But not before a glass of schnapps to cleanse the palate, Hillberg said, and of course, a very Swedish drinking song to toast this very Swedish fish.
Helan går.
Helan går.
And then you drink it out, kind of, but we'll do a little taste. And then afterwards,
Oh, yeah.
Sjung hoppara lanley.
Hung hoppara anley.
Good.
All right, skål.
Skål.
For the World, I'm Josh Coe in Gothenburg, Sweden.
The World is produced by GBH and PRX, broadcasting weekdays from the Nan and Bill Harris studio in Boston and from the Department of Communication at UC San Diego. I'm Carolyn Beeler.
And I'm Marco Werman. Join us right back here tomorrow.
The World is supported by the Carnegie Corporation of New York, working to reduce political polarization through philanthropic support for education, democracy, and peace. More information at carnegie.org. By the Lumina Foundation, committed to a fair, universal system for learning beyond high school that offers every American the chance for a better life. LuminaFoundation.org. By the PRX Ambassador Council, whose members include Judy Piggott, the Gruber Family Foundation, the Schmidt Family Foundation, and Gavin Salmonese, LLC. The World's theme music is composed by Ned Porter. The World is a co-production of GBH Boston and PRX.
PRX.